I'm here with Mike Duerksen, my very close Canadian friend who I've only ever met on LinkedIn. But there's something beautiful about social networks where you can find kind of your intellectual, twin souls, that type of thing. So, Mike, welcome today. It's been such a pleasure to get to learn more from your work, from your way of thinking about philanthropy over the last few months. Would you like to tell people what it is that you do? And then I'll go into what it is that we're going to talk about today.
Sure. I mean, first of all, it's just an honor and a pleasure to join you on this thing. I've been watching you build a donor participation project for almost 2 years now. And it's been amazing what you and the whole community are achieving by building in public on LinkedIn. It's been one of the bright spots actually for me during the pandemic, is watching this whole community sort of develop and form. So thanks for giving me the chance to be here. And we've got something exciting that you and I are doing together that we're going to announce toward the end of this, I guess. But I run Buildgood. We're a fundraising agency. We help nonprofits create human-centered direct response fundraising communications, direct mail, newsletters, donor-loving communications. And the reason we focus on that is so that fundraisers can get back to building one-on-one human, messy relationships with their donors. And they don't have to worry about sort of hiding behind donor comms and working on that all the time.
That's wonderful. So, folks, check out Buildgood. There, he has tons of free resources and fun resources that you'll enjoy. So, a little explainer about what the Donor Participation Project is. It's a community of fundraisers. We started getting together about 18 months ago. We're up to 1,500 fellow fundraisers who get together every month to learn from each other how to grow donor participation in our nonprofits. And what I like about it is that it seems like it's kind of such a dumb thing. It's just a number, but there's so much depth to it if you really want to build inclusive, participatory organizations. And that's where Mike adds a lot of depth, because, you know, what for others would just be, okay, yes, he sends letters, he asks, for money, is really, when you go deep into it, it's a trust building device. It's a community building device that you can do a whole lot without, at a distance, essentially, just like we're here right now. Right, Mike? And you posted something on LinkedIn that touched me. Do you remember that post?
Yeah, I'm trying to think which one you might be referring to right now.
I can read it.
Okay.
You said, fundamental truth, what you do between appeals is way more important than the appeals themselves.
Yeah.
Care to explain?
Sure. I mean, look, we're a direct response fundraising agency, and I'm always telling clients that what we do is such a tiny piece. It's not your strategy, and it shouldn't be a strategy. It's just like one tool that you're using. And you can absolutely, and you should be using direct response fundraising to build trust, to get to know donors, to acquire new donors, to identify donors who want to deepen their relationship with you. Absolutely. But what makes all of that work is what happens between the appeals. And that is the hard work of engaging with donors, getting to know your donors, talking to them. There's so much stuff that happens between appeals that actually make the appeals sort of work. And I want to also be very careful about the errors of attribution. Direct response fundraisers love attribution. I love data and attribution. However, we don't judge the success of the program based on if we can attribute everything to direct mail or to the email or to the landing page or to whatever. We kind of base it on net revenue and how is revenue operations, like your fundraising team, how's everybody working together as a team to increase donor participation and increase net revenue.
This is amazing. Let me do a couple of call outs. First, Christopher Beck. He was in the chat. He's building an inclusive philanthropy team at ALSAC. Incredible fundraiser. So hi, Christopher. Thank you for being here. For everybody else, if you're a part of the DPP, that's how we call the Donor Participation Project, please say hi. If you're not, please, ask Mike a question as we go. Just, or things that you're inspired by. And I was just reading something about attribution today, Mike, where, how do you measure trust building? like when your CEO sends out either a comms piece or goes on LinkedIn Live or any other live platform and speaks with all your donors at once, right? How do you measure word mouth to mouth referrals? There's just so much that it gets, it's almost counterintuitive, right? There's a book called The Tyranny of Metrics, I think, out there. But supposedly direct response has always been this, oh, finally something we can measure and we can know if it works or it doesn't. How do you help people hold those two thoughts in their head at the same time?
Sure. So the way that we might use direct response metrics is to compare how it did to a comparable piece, not to compare how it's doing in terms of your fundraising strategy necessarily. So when we're testing, we're trying to see, can we increase response if that's what we're trying to optimize for? Most of the time, that's what I'm trying to optimize for. I want more and more donors participating rather than optimizing for average gift or something else. But then as a whole, you just see, okay, out of the people that responded to this, who are they? What's their behavior like? What are we trying to do? How are we trying to build trust? How are we trying to increase their connection to the people they're trying to help? This doesn't apply to every nonprofit, but if you have beneficiaries, for example, that your donors are trying to help through you, I'll give you a very short example. A lift of an organization that helps refugees settle in Canada. Now, you may ask for money to help that organization welcome refugees. That's great. Now, what we would also do is we would send along a little thing. It's a little thing that says, hey, welcome to Canada, your new home. We're so glad that you're our neighbors. Here's top 5 things that you should know about our city. Here's top 5 things you can do. The donor sends that back and they add a little note and they may or may not sign their name to it. And then that gets given to a refugee family when they arrive in Canada and the agency settles them. And that's a way of saying, hey, these are the people who make this all happen. This is a little welcome gift for you, right? So how can you close the gap between the donors and the actual work? And you can use a lot of direct response sort of tools and tactics to do that.
That's so cool. And a little bit, tell me if this is the right way to think about things. Oops, I'm scared. Can everybody see my screen? We'll get back to that in a second. But tell me if this is a good way to think about this, Mike, because I know you run kind of strategic workshops with your clients, but is it a little bit like we're trying to take pieces of that one-on-one major donor experience and, as much as possible, kind of push them down the pyramid, and I think of, well, you're trying to have a two-way communication. You're trying to make people feel heard. You're trying to kind of give that reporting, that one-on-one feeling of impact that maybe somebody who sits in a board has because they see it, every meeting.
Absolutely. That's exactly what you're trying to do. And now we're not fooling anybody. Somebody who gets a direct mail, they know you didn't write them a letter specifically, although we're going to get into something like that later on. So you don't have to fool anybody, but you are trying to say, hey, what is the closest, what can I make for you as a human to another human to see you for the human that you are? How can I draw you into this work? Because I consider you an important part of the team and I want you to be part of this. And I'm grateful you're part of it. And you are just as important part of the team as a $250,000 a year donor who may sit on the board and get VIP ticket invites to events. That's exactly what you're trying to do. Is you're just trying to you're trying to be a good human at the end of the day.
Oh, wonderful. So we're trying to scale humanity. That's so wonderful. For people that are joining us, what are ways that have worked for you that you feel deep down in your gut helped with fundraising, but weren't technically kind of a fundraising letter? We'd love to hear that, just kind of strategies that you've tried. And what we're going to do is answer one quick question from Jay Goulart now. Hi, Jay. Thanks so much for joining us. And then we're going to start into the promised 5 ways to raise more money before the fundraising ask. So Jay is asking a question, Mike, and I'm going to I have a funny answer for this one, but I'll let you go at it first. What is the approximate word count that has the best chances for an action?
All right.
Crazy question. Thank you, Jay, for torturing us.
I will interpret this question for Jay a little bit, because I'm not. It could mean a number of things, whether we're talking about an email or a direct mail campaign. So first, I'm going to give you sort of the non-answer answer, which is as long as or as short as it takes to get the offer and the story across. However, I'm going to go into a little bit more detail, and that is our most successful campaigns are usually a 4-page letter, not a 2-page letter.
My goodness, you're taking it to new limits.
And I will also say, though, that you can totally do a 2-page letter with an audience that knows you really well and that already trusts you. Okay, if the audience trusts you, it doesn't have to be a 4-page letter. But our most successful packs, even to the core donor base, are usually a 4-page letter plus a full-page lift note. So a lift note is different from the letter. It supports the offer, but it's usually more fun. It might be a map, it might be drawing, it might be blueprints, it might be some pictures. It might be a note from somebody else. So if the letter was written from the CEO, the lift note might be from a beneficiary, or it might be from a program manager. Sometimes the lift note can even be like an email. You make it look like an email that you received. Like if your program manager sends you an email that there's this urgent need, that can be a lift note. So usually it's a 4-page letter, a lift note, and a full-page reply device, because many of us have donors in our file that are over the age of 45, over the age of 50, where they start to have some visibility, some vision, wearing glasses, or they can't see as well as they used to. By the way, that's most of us, even us younger folks, like almost half of us have some sort of vision impairment. And so a full-page reply device allows you to do a few things. Great experience for the donor filling it out. They don't have to be trying to get those credit card numbers in little boxes. But B, you also get to talk about planned giving and give them other giving options so they can give from their wealth, not just from cash.
This is great, Steve. No, not a Times New Roman letter, a 1-page letter. No, exactly. And don't put your letter into an email either. That doesn't tend to work a whole lot. But what surprised me, Mike, is that the work you do, you need to do a whole lot with just that one package. And from what I hear you say, you kind of need that real estate, right? And that was kind of what I was going after with our conversation today, which is, is it practical to think that you're going to be able to do all all the trust building, all the different education of ways of giving, that you're going to do that just with that one letter? And are there ways that you can reinforce that?
I should also say we don't do annual fund campaigns. And I know I'm going to get a lot of flack. I'm going to get hate mail. That's okay. You can email me, mike@buildgood.com. You can tell me I'm wrong. I have a lot of friends and people in the industry that I love and admire who do annual fund campaigns and who love them. We don't, because we don't believe in it. And I know that's a strong statement. But what I'm trying to say is that we don't believe in the traditional sort of old school annual fund appeal. And I completely get that in higher education, it still works really well. So I'm not downplaying that at all. I'm just saying for all of our clients, we don't do it. We prefer to do more as it happens, what's going on right now, what is the need right now, campaigns multiple times throughout the year. And I'll give you a very, very quick analogy of how I think about it. And again, I firm opinions loosely held. I could be completely wrong, okay? But if a friend asks you, hey, can I borrow $200 for what? Well, for my annual budget. Okay. But if a friend says, hey, can I borrow $200 for what? Well, my car broke down. I need to fix the brakes. I just, next paycheck is a few weeks away. You're so much more inclined to give because it's a real problem you can solve for somebody. And of course, you'd love to help out a friend. But if it's just a general, it's for my annual budget. Okay, maybe not.
Very good. Food for thought. I'm going to start this screen share. And as we go, everybody who's connected today, please weigh in. Or, at the very least, just say where you're calling in from and what are your reactions to what Mike's sharing with us. So I'm not going to be able to see us. So let's just go into this. Mike, care to explain?
Yeah, I think we just, I know this is the tweet that you were referring to. Yeah, this is what we're going to talk about, which is the stuff that you do between appeals. It struck a bit of a nerve. People seem to resonate with it. So I'm glad that you picked this as the topic for today. I also want to say that I'm not going to be talking about thanking for the gift or gratitude. That's table stakes. The fact that in 2022, we're still talking about how we should be thanking our donors sometimes depresses me a little bit. Like that's if you're not doing that, that's table stakes. So we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about a few other ways to engage donors. Hopefully, you are thanking your donors profusely.
That's such a great point, because I remember reading Penelope Burke's research, and if I don't remember incorrectly, and I could be wrong, so somebody please correct me. She said, I think the top reason people stopped giving wasn't really because they haven't been thanked effusively enough, but was because they hadn't been communicated with, the impact of their gift, all that type of thing. So, I'm of a double, I have my doubts about, does really over thanking people serve the goal?
Yeah.
So number one thing that you can do to raise more money before asking is to measure the donor experience. And you have an example here. You want me to go into it?
Yeah, I should say these aren't necessarily ranked in terms of importance. These are just 5 important things that I think you should be doing. So number one is sort of measuring the donor experience. Our colleagues in the for-profit world do this really well. And this is one of those areas that for some reason we haven't really caught on to yet. The folks at Donor Voice do a really good job of this. This is based off of their methodology. So go follow those people. They've got lots of resources on that. But we should be continually sort of measuring how our donors are experiencing our appeals and our campaigns and our communications. And
is this a survey tool? Tell us a little bit more of the nitty gritty.
Yeah, it's a micro survey tool, and you really ideally want to be running this always. Like, this is a continuous business process. It's not a survey you run once. So this is one of our clients. This is after a donor has just made a gift. They land on the post donation page, which a lot of organizations, frankly, completely underutilize. So here's just a bit of a gratitude, what a kind and caring thing you've done. And then it takes them to a survey. Now, you could do the survey right here. The technology in this case didn't allow for it. That's why there's a button that says supporter satisfaction survey. But then on the next slide, it takes you to the survey. And the survey is all about the email and the landing page and donation experience that they just went through. So basically asking them, like, hey, did you feel like the decision today was yours to give and yours alone? And you're sort of looking for, how much autonomy did the donor feel when they made the gift? How connected did you feel to the cause? Did you feel a sense of community? Did you feel connected? You're measuring competence. Did the donor feel like they were actually making a difference with their gift? So these are usually like 4 to 6 questions. It takes 10 seconds for a donor to do this. And in the back end, there's 2 things that you want to do with this information. Number one is, if somebody is scoring low on some of these, that's your opportunity to reach out to that person and say, hey, I'm so sorry you felt like the decision to give wasn't yours, which means the donor felt like they were guilted into making the gift.
So what does that mean? That they felt like manipulated into it? Or
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it gives you a chance to then reach out to that donor and to make it right. So that's number one. You want to look at these scores, and if somebody is scoring low, you just want to reach out to them. But number 2 is, in aggregate, you just want to see how you're doing. Are you improving? Are you right? So that just gives you an idea of how your donor comms are performing. By the way, this is not just for a digital experience. If you're acquiring donors face-to-face, if you're acquiring donors at an event, if you're running events, hopefully anytime you have a donor experience that seems significant, where there's a gift exchange, you want to be running sort of a quick satisfaction survey to look for sort of autonomy, connectedness, competence. And in the next slide, you'll see that this campaign was also a print campaign. This is the full page reply device I was talking about. And so on the back of the reply device, it's the same survey. So when they are sending back their gift and they're using the reply form to send it back, they can already fill out that survey because they're not getting the digital experience.
This is fantastic. Mike, tell us a little bit more. I see you're using, some of the research, like there must be like a TED Talk or something, right? About how competence, autonomy, purpose, that drives retention at work, employee retention. Tell us why do you think these are the things to ask?
Yeah, so I'm not a behavioral scientist. I'm not a scientist at all. And so I'm going to leave that to the pros. But the Institute for Sustainable Philanthropy, folks like Donor Voice, they have pioneered some of these approaches. And the TED Talk you're referring to, that's sort of those three, forgetting his name right now, Harvard business prof, talks about it a lot as well. Those are the three sort of main areas that psychologists, behavioral scientists, whatever, have identified as core drivers of human well-being, which is, do you feel autonomous at work? Do you feel connected to the people you're working with? And do you feel like you're competent? And the same, Jen Shang and Adrian Sargent at the Institute for Sustainable Philanthropy have applied the same to the philanthropic field.
This is amazing. What I love about being able to connect with Mike is that he's a walking encyclopedia. I think I put this in a post already. Sorry for that descriptor if you don't feel it's appropriate, but boy, you know everything.
Okay,
number 2.
Supporter connection survey. This is going to be a little bit hard for us to get super tactical because we could spend a lot of time talking about what the survey should actually look like.
Okay, I'll shut up, but if people ask questions, we'll answer them, okay?
Yeah, for sure. But in general, you want to run this once or twice a year. You probably want to run this for newer donors. You probably want to, every few months see what new donors you have. Hopefully you have a new donor sort of onboarding journey. And as part of that journey, there's a survey. But there's a few things that you can do with this survey. Now, number one, I want to be clear. You're going to get a lot of messy qualitative data, and that's okay. You're going to use the results from the survey based with the hard data of donor behavior. Donors speak loudest through their actions and by making gifts. So you do have some hard sort of quantitative data that you can go off, and you're going to use this to sort of round out your understanding of your donors. And for some of these fields, you're actually going to use them to populate your CRM. So basically, you want to see, who might be in a position to give a larger gift, because the truth is the $50 donor at your organization might be a $50,000 donor somewhere else, and you might not know it because you're doing your same RFM score every single time you send out a direct mail piece, and they've been given $50, so they get the $50 ask string, and they send the $50 gift because that's what they've been asked to do. So you want to ask some questions about giving capacity, and you can do this. If we're going to get to a question in the next slide that shows you how to do this. There's ways of doing this without saying like, hey, are you a mid-level donor? Because that's definitely not what you want to do. You want to identify people who've already left you a gift in their will, people who might be willing to, who might be interested, who might be able to. You want to identify monthly giving prospects. And you're never asking, in these questions, you're never asking, will you become a monthly donor? You always say things like, we've got a monthly donor program. A lot of donors to this organization love the monthly giving program because this. Is that something you might be interested in? So you're not asking people to become a monthly donor. You're always just asking if they're interested in it. You want to identify brain share contributors. One of the biggest misses that we probably, in our sector, one of the biggest things we miss on is that we're always asking for wallet share and we're not asking for brain share, right? Like you could ask donors, you could have an advisory circle, something like that. And you could ask donors, hey, from time to time, we really want to know from people what their experience is like. We want to know what they think about the program. Might you be interested in being part of something like that, where from time to time we ask for your advice and your feedback? You want to get a bit of an idea of donor identity. Now, you can do specific donor identity surveys. That's why there's sort of an asterisk here. There's a methodology to that as well, but you can ask donors how they might describe themselves. You can ask donors how they might describe themselves in relation to, in the context of your organization. You can ask donors to rate moral attributes, for example. And then you can also ask for literally just open feedback. Like, hey, how are we doing here? Like let me know. And again, messy qualitative data, but we're all smart fundraisers. We all know how to take some of this data and sort of, with a bit of gut feeling, with a bit of hard data, we can paint out we can paint a picture that gets a little bit more HD.
Word clouds to the rescue, right?
Yeah.
Awesome.
So the next slide, right? You can do this within the next 6 months or so. Do you think you could be in a position to make a special donation of, and then you kind of want to have this variable depending on who you're sending this to, or more to a special campaign, right? You're going to get some hand raisers here. And in that case, those are the folks that within the next 6 months, you're going to go back to with a proposal for that amount or more.
That's so interesting. And, it's much easier to talk about something in the future, right? Kind of conceptually.
Yeah, and I mean, you've read the Principles of Persuasion by Cialdini. He cites a bunch of research on where they ask people to, would you ever consider volunteering for this organization, without asking them to become volunteers, just as that's something you would consider in the future. And one of the principles is consistency. We like to be consistent with ourselves. If I said in the past that's something I might want to do, and then in the future I'm reminded of it, I don't want to look inconsistent. So if in a few months you say, hey, you said in the next 6 months you might be interested in contributing, to a special campaign, is that something you're in a position to do now? Because here's the thing, here's a project, here's how much it's going to cost. Would you be in a position today to make that gift? People are more likely to respond positively.
Awesome. That is, I always think that pledges, it's kind of the same concept, right? You're promising money in the future. I always feel like that's an underutilized tool.
Yeah, so I'll get into a little tactic here. Once a year, we often run an unusual ask campaign where it's to identify mid-level donors, where we send people an offer that is a lot higher than they're used to giving. And within the first sentence, we say, hey, this is an unusual ask. And if you're not in a position to contribute this amount, I totally get it. Anything you're able to do will help. And then you go into the offer. It's a high offer. But then in the reply device, you say, hey, this is an important project. This is an important campaign. We'd love for you to be a part of this. Here's some other ways to give. One, do you want, you can spread your gift out over the next 6 months or 12 months, or B, you can make a pledge, or you can give from shares or from different ways of giving. And that can be really helpful for donors who want to make that larger gift. They're just not in a cash position to make that larger gift. And even if they're in a cash position to make the larger gift, they may feel like they're not. And this is happening to all of us right now with inflation. We all feel like we have less cash, and it feels a lot more risky to make a $2,000 gift to charity, even though we may have that and we might be very comfortable making that gift. Right now, that feels risky because the world feels ever so slightly uncertain. And so spreading that out over 6 months or 12 months, or just making a pledge for doing it later, can be really helpful.
I love that. Another strategy I saw Wikipedia using in their fundraising, at one point, they test a lot of stuff, right? Was to put, right under the giving button is maybe later, and then they ask for your email or something like that. I thought that was kind of another application of the same principle. Pretty smart. Okay, so we've done 2 ways that you can raise money before the ask. And so to recap, measure the donor experience, which is also kind of a form of continued engagement, right? So you want to have more communications than just that letter, that solicitation letter or package. I'll do other types of surveys. So really heavy on surveys, which I love. Number 3, send an impact report letter or email. And then what does that mean?
Yeah, so it doesn't mean an annual report, even though those are great. And if you do those, more power to you. It doesn't mean stats on your website, although those can be great. Doesn't mean blog posts. doesn't mean news stories, earned media, doesn't mean email newsletter, doesn't even mean a newsletter. I put an asterisk beside here because if you work with Buildgood, the newsletter looks different and it can totally be the newsletter. But I mean like the traditional newsletter that a lot of nonprofits put out. A donor makes a gift to a very specific campaign. And then most of the time, they do not get an update on their specific gift for that specific campaign. They get a newsletter that is a random update on everything that is happening. Most of your donors, I'm sorry, are not reading your annual report. Most of them are not going to your website. Look at the actual data. Look how many people actually visit your website. Look at how many people actually read your blog post. Even how many people are looking at your social media posts. For many organizations, it's shockingly low. Because we're also not doing a great job of engagement online. We're just doing this one-to-many, spray this stuff out there, and hopefully it lands on enough eyeballs. So those are not great places unless you're super strategic about them and you're very actively engaged with donors on those places. Look at how many emails you have on file compared to your entire donor file. Half of them, maybe, and then look at your open rate. Let's say you're killing it, 50% open rate every time. Okay, you're reaching 1/4 of your donor file with your email newsletter and with your email updates.
Okay, so you got us, Mike. What's the answer? What's the solution? Shall I go on?
This is an easy thing to do, and it doesn't have to be fancy. But let's say you ran a campaign and you got 100 donations to that campaign. Okay, you thanked those people. A few weeks later, sit down at a computer. This can be Times New Roman on a one-page on a letterhead. This can be all right. I think it was Steve who was asking about that. This is your time to shine if that's your jam, right? Just hammer out a heartfelt letter and update the donor on their specific gift to that specific campaign. Mention how much the donor gave. Go to Walmart, develop a bunch of pictures related to it, put them in the envelope, and then send it out. Now, this doesn't have to be. This does not have to be complicated. It'll take you an afternoon.
The pieces are starting to come together for me, Mike. Sorry for interrupting you. Like you're kind of just establishing with this approach of kind of sequential needs that you're doing, and then the follow-ups, which look like this. It kind of feels like a conversation, right? Yeah,
exactly. You got it. Now, next level tip here is in your appeal, promise them this already. Hey, today, look, in about, I'm going to send you a personal update on how your gift went to work. Or I'm going to send you, if you go to the next slide, this is a food bank client in BC. In this campaign, it's called a starfish campaign. So when summer comes, it's a great day for kids because they're out of school, except for kids who rely on school to get their food. So for them, it's a bad day, right? Because now it's a summer that they're not at school. So this program gives food hampers. We call them hampers in Canada. I know it's a foreign concept elsewhere. I don't know if you call them food packs or packets or I don't know. But you get a food hamper during the summer. So we told donors, hey, if you contribute to this, on the first day of distribution, we're going to send you a picture. Of the distribution that you made happen. So on that day, this was an impact email in this case, tons of pictures to the donor, buying the food at the grocery store, putting these things together and then handing them out in the parking lot. So this is what you're part of. On the same day your money went to work, we're going to send you a picture. Why? Because we think you're an important part of the team, and wouldn't it be great if you were here with us?
Very cool. Goosebumps. I already have goosebumps. So, would you care to share your fourth thought?
Yeah. So this is these all kind of play into each other, as you can tell. But this is sort of as it happens updates, and as it happens requesting advice. So we talked about brain share before. Now the key here is kind of as it happens. And this is a bit of a commitment. It's a bit of a commitment for you to be okay not to have to go through 50 layers of approval, for you to stick to the content calendar. Well, no, we can't do that. This month, our theme this month is innovation. And what will donors think if they got an email on innovation on Monday And on Friday, they got an email from us about something that isn't innovation related.
Oh my goodness. Can't imagine.
Right? Infrastructure week. It's like donors don't care about your content calendar, and they don't care about your themes all that much. But they might be interested to know if something very interesting or urgent or noteworthy is happening at this place that they care about a lot. So I'm being facetious in the next slide here, but really only do this if you do consider donors to be an important part of your team. If that is not the mindset currently, this is going to be hard to do. It's not going to be joyful to do. If you do consider donors part of a really important part of your team, this is going to be a very joyful thing for you to do. And I think we can go to the next slide here.
Well, and also you can't really, pardon my friends, kind of BS your way through this. Like, people are going to tell you that, you've asked me 20 times and you never did anything on it. And so,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah. If you're inauthentic about this, just don't even bother, right? So how can you surprise and delight donors? Can you pass along a picture of something that just happened? Can you pass along a great story that just happened? If something gets shared with all staff, by the way, I'm not advocating you send everything to donors that gets shared with all staff, because 99% of the time your donors won't care. But if something gets shared with all staff, and the reason it got shared with all staff is because it was a great story, or it was like something really neat that happened, or something important, could you also just share that with donors that same day? Maybe. Can you ask for advice? Can you ask for help with a problem? If you're building something, can you share blueprints or plans, or can you send just a quick update? We are geared to think this way in social media already. So that's another way. Maybe institutions are sharing stuff on social media as it's happening oftentimes. Just ask yourself, could this also be a quick update for donors via email? And it can be a 3-sentence email. Our emails don't have to be corporate long emails, whatever, all the time. It can literally just be like, hey, this just happened. I thought I'd share it with you. You're a big part of this. Thanks.
Yeah. I was going to respond to Steve's comment earlier that some of the subject lines that I find to work best are like super informal, like almost like a text message, right? Thanks in lower caps.
Yep, absolutely. So I'll a quick example with you in the next slide. So we had last year in Canada in November, BC floods, sort of historic floods. The situation was developing rapidly. So the mayor of this town in Abbotsford gets on live TV and says, listen, the next few hours are going to be critical. If you live in this certain area, you should evacuate right now. Your lives are at risk. So the ED, the CEO of this small charity, saw this live on TV, and he texted me and he said, we've got a few donors in BC. Oh, they don't work in BC, they work in Latin America, and they're a faith-based organization. And within 20 minutes, we had pulled a list of donors, which was a little bit over 300, and we had sent them a plain text email. I think it's 4 or 5 sentences. The subject line was all lower caps, "You okay?" ? And then it was just like, hey, hey, Louis, I'm just watching this happen on TV. I wanted to reach out. Are you okay? Please know that we've told our partners in Latin America about this, and they're all praying for you already. Now, think about this. These are donors who were active donors to this organization to help people in Latin America. And now the tables are turned. Now people in Latin America are praying for them. And this happened within 20 minutes of their mayor telling them, things are getting really bad right now. Now, this didn't require any chain of approval. It was just, type it out in 5 minutes, send it out. And not everybody has to approve this thing. It's just a good human thing to do. So it goes back to just what does it look like being a good friend and a good human for the donors who are showing up for you? You probably have a duty of care to do this sort of stuff.
Okay, before we go into the 5th one, Mike, let's address the naysayers to these approaches, which are, well, can you prove that doing that improves, fundraising, essentially? What do you tell people? And I'm sure you've heard that before. No, what's the ROI of doing this, of just being more human?
Okay, first question. Can you prove it? I can't point to this email and say that's why you raised more money. No, I can tell you that you will build more trust, you will be a better friend, you will draw donors in closer. And if you think that that leads to more engaged donors, if you think that leads to donors trusting your organization more, if you think that that leads to their increased well-being because they're becoming better versions of themselves because they get to be part of something bigger than this, let's start there. Is that your mindset? If that is your mindset, then I think it doesn't matter what the exact ROI is, because we know that over the long term, we're going to build a more resilient fundraising operation.
Oh my goodness. So you're actually telling people to do it if they think it's the right thing to do, which is kind of like saying, strategically, I just tell people, well, is this part of your strategy? And sometimes, you just have to go with it. Mike, another question. So you spoke about a small fundraising operation. All of this, while it's the right thing to do, because you do it at scale, generates more volume, and it's the right type of volume, right? It's these are the conversations you need to be having more of if you want to grow. But how do people deal with, imagine you send this email during the floods and there's 500 responses, 150, and then those people need to be answered, and what I can just imagine myself, right? And then major gift officers maybe say they're overwhelmed. What's the best approach?
Yeah, so the best approach for this might be to, before you do any of this, as a team, agree on whether it's the right thing to do. If it's the right thing to do and if it's successful, what does that say about our priorities and how are we going to allocate time and resources and staff? If you just start bolting this on and it happens to work, and now you're like, oh my goodness, there's no way we can steward with these donors. And we've had these conversations before where an organization said, hey, we're actually not all that thrilled. Our KPI is like $300 average gift. You've doubled the amount of gifts that are coming in. Our gift processing team is overwhelmed. Got a lot more net revenue, but we're not hitting the KPI of, okay, so then
that's nuts.
I think we've built the foundation wrong here, and this is a great opportunity to rebuild that foundation and just to have a really frank and honest conversation about, if we believe this is the right thing to do, then how will we allocate resources and time and staff to make it happen? But I totally hear you. I think it's a fantastic problem to have, that you have so many donations and donors coming in that you can't thank them within 24 hours, which is fine. If you can't thank them within 24 hours, it's okay. You'll get to it. But I think you should look at that as an opportunity to be like, okay, what if we do twice as much? Like, how exciting, next campaign we get twice as much. What do we need to do between now and then? It's a little bit like the question of, one of our team members the other day challenged me. We're building systems and processes, and I used the sentence, we're doing this so that if I get hit by a bus, or if somebody else gets hit by a bus, the other team members will be able to carry on. And she said, let's just reframe that. Like, what if you win the lottery?
Okay, good.
So this is the same thing. Like, oh no, what if we get so many donations? What if we get so many donations? How amazing would that be? Let's think about how we might handle that. I know that's not a definitive sort of tactical answer. Here's exactly how to do it. But it's a way to think about it, which I think is probably more helpful.
Well, this is what I love, because if you go deeply into these issues, they turn out to be profoundly strategic. Like, do you believe that your organization should have, double the amount of gifts that you're having? And then, that's going to involve change. It's not just kind of tacking on these things. If you don't change these things, and you do ask, and you do the things that lead to that, like asking for opinions and sending emails that kind of feel like you should answer them because they're amazing, it's going to be a problem, really, if you don't have that strategy in place, right?
Yep.
My goodness, learning so much today. Okay, folks that are here, I find that sometimes gift officers kind of will do this naturally. Would love to hear your stories of kind of outreach and how you've done things that maybe you thought, well, we could actually be doing this with all our donors, or we should be doing this with all our donors. So just an invitation for further thoughts. Mike, how do you feel if we go into your fifth and last idea to raise more gifts before asking? Awesome.
Oh, here was one more example of this was an example. If you go back, this is a great example of a pass along. So this is an organization that is responding in Ukraine. And so a lot of their emails over the last 2 weeks had sort of been about the campaign and raising funds. And then in between, they shifted to just passing along stuff that they were getting from Ukraine. So this is an email of literally the CEO was on a Zoom call with a program manager in Ukraine. And so they recorded part of it and sent it to donors.
This is awesome. How nimble is your team to be able to do all of this? And you said kind of, well, you have to be careful with wanting to stick too much to a calendar, you know, you know, does this, like, are you constantly in a state of emergency? Do you budget for kind of having a calendar, but with space to do these things as they come up?
Are you asking specifically about the Buildgood team or about the client's team?
Well, I'm almost kind of assuming you're doing it for clients, but yeah, any advice, you know, related to what you do at Buildgood or that you've seen works in your clients?
Sure, of course. I mean, we Louis, I'll tell you, we plan out a campaign runway for us is 12 to 14 weeks ahead of time. So we plan out very much ahead of time, and we plan for everything. The beauty of that is if you're working that far ahead of time, you've got space to make changes. So you want to be, even with your team, I feel like you want to plan as much as possible and be completely open to changing everything in the last moment.
Wow. So hope folks that are here, have you planned your next fiscal year? I'll just and if your fiscal year starts in July, I'll let you stew on that.
You know what? Just get away from the sunk cost fallacy. It's going to feel like, but we had planned for this. Now we can't do this. It's okay. It's all right. Yeah, it's okay. This is more important.
Deal with it.
Give yourself the permission to change. And by the way, we look at fundraising campaign as assets. So everything that we are building, we're thinking, can we run this again next year or the year after? Can we repurpose it? So right now, we've got a few appeals we created for clients that never went out, but they will someday. They're created. Next time we don't know what to do, we're going to go back to that appeal and see, is this evergreen enough? Do we need to make some changes here? And by the way, we sometimes run very, very similar campaigns from year to year. So these are assets.
And work, right?
Yeah, absolutely. These are assets you want to build. I'm sorry to burst everybody's imagination. Like we think of donors holding these precious pieces that we spend so much time with. No donor is going to frame this and hang it up. No donor is going to hang on to it, unfortunately. Even
if you include an origami duck or penguin?
They might. We actually did an origami campaign. We can talk about that sometime.
You're stealing all my ideas without even knowing about them.
But yeah, these are assets, and you can use them again.
This is amazing. Okay, the final one. We have a few minutes. So tell us, number 5.
Yeah, quarterly investors call. Sorry to anybody who sort of reels at any comparison to the for-profit or commercial world. We can change this language. We can call it a quarterly donor love call or a quarterly stewardship call or a town hall. Now, if people don't like politics, they might not like town hall, whatever it is. You understand what we mean. We mean a quarterly update for donors that happens live, where everybody's tuning in at the same time, where there can be some interaction. Now, public companies by law have to do this, right? It's called an earnings call, and every quarter, any shareholder who has invested gets to take part in this. And who are we to think that we shouldn't have that same sort of open and transparent scrutiny for the people who support our organizations? I think we do consider ourselves public good organizations. And so why not give donors a chance once a quarter to join in that? Why not build in public? Why not be completely open and honest about everything we're doing? Now, the objection might be, well, donors just don't understand, right? They don't, we're going to have to, explain why we spent this much on this or what. I understand. I agree. Sometimes donors don't understand, but what an opportunity to just still bring them into the process and to answer any questions. You don't want to do this in your fundraising. You don't want to be educating your donors in your fundraising. So if you've got a leadership team that always wants to be educating in the fundraising appeals, this is also a great internal solution for you as a fundraiser to be like, great idea, Mr. CEO. Let's put that in the next town hall because it deserves attention. Okay. So yeah, build in public. What are you working on right now? What's the progress toward your goals? Do you have any wins and losses you can share? Are you facing any problems? In terms of like social proof, you can ask volunteers and donors and other people to actually share on the call ahead of time. Just ask them to prepare a 2-minute or a 3-minute thing. You can guide them through it. You can do it like Lewis and I are doing right now. You can take 2 minutes to interview somebody. You can share financial updates. When you do this, make sure that you have a person who knows how to tell the narrative of those numbers really, really well, so donors understand what it means. Don't assume that donors will understand this. You can allow time for Q&A, and you can record this, and you can repurpose this content over the next few months.
Wow, brutal. This is so exciting. And you talk about it in such a matter-of-fact way, as if it were such a normal thing, when kind of the reality is that if you did all of these 5 things, you'd be, superstar nonprofit. Now,
few people might show up to this quarterly town hall. We've seen a few organizations try this, but I would encourage you to at least stick with it for a while and see how it does.
That's what I was going to say. One of the
send the replay out to donors, right?
One of the principles of building community is, you have to be consistent. And kind of turn it into something that people start to expect. Glenn is asking a question, another wonderful DPP member. Say 10 words about the sunken cost fallacy. And I don't think he really means 10 words, but I'll count.
Okay. Sunken cost fallacy is when you invest so much into something, you feel like you have to finish it because of the amount of investment you have into it, even if it's not the right thing to do. I go to law.
Words. Pretty good.
I go to law school for 4 years, right? I spent a lot of money on it. I've got 2 years left of it, but I realize I will never, ever, ever want to be a lawyer. But in my head, I'm like, I already paid for 4 years of law school. I may as well spend the next 2 years finishing it. Even though you're not going to become a lawyer. That's a sunken cost fallacy.
I've been in a relationship for, not me, obviously. But for X amount of years, and I'm unhappy. But I've invested so much of my life in it that I can't move away from it.
Sure. Now, any of us who grew up with immigrant parents like I did, like this is a thing. This is the sunken cost fallacy is deeply ingrained in us. You buy tickets to a ball game and it's pouring rain. You're not going to leave. I paid $15 to be here. And, I'm going to be miserable for the next hour, but I'm going to get my money's worth out of it. I paid for this parking spot for an hour. There's 20 minutes left on the parking spot. I'm going to sit in my car and work from my phone until my time is up. So that's sort of the sunken cost fallacy that we often run into. And it's especially true for people who grew up being frugal, which is a very, very, very good value to have. But you have to start to think about it more rationally.
Really tough stuff. And nonprofits are famous or infamous for their frugality, right?
Yeah.
Well, goodness, this has been a whirlwind of ideas. Folks, I hope you benefit from this. If you have questions, send them on to Mike. Connect with him on LinkedIn. Go to his website, buildgood.com. It has some fantastic resources for everybody. If you're here because you kind of like the donor participation project, you may have heard about our conference. It's starting in just 3 weeks, April 22. It's going to be amazing. Mike's team has been very supportive. They're one of our sponsors. Thank you. Thank you to everybody. Thank you for being a part of this. And thank you for making the sector, better. Mike, would you like to say anything before we leave? Invite people, something I've missed, invite people to connect with you in some other way?
No, LinkedIn is the best place to find me. But Louis, you and I have got something going on that
oh my goodness.
We wanted to take to talk about.
Oh, yes. Okay. So Mike, you get started talking about it, and then I'm going to ask folks on this call in the last 5 minutes to give us their feedback on some assets.
Sure. Well, Louis and I are both concerned about the level of donor engagement in nonprofits in Canada and the US. And as part of Louis's mission to increase donor participation, and as part of Buildgood's mission to help nonprofits have really tactical tools to do that, we're going to launch a podcast called the Donor Growth Podcast. And we are hoping that it can be of service to people on this journey. And Louis will share about the growth of the donor participation project on it. I'm going to share some learnings as we go along with our clients. And we're just hoping to add a ton of value to people who want to learn more about this stuff. And people who are watching this session are learners. So hopefully many of you can join us in that.
Okay, there we go. Let me put it on the screen because we need your advice on the podcast image. And please ignore these things in the corner. But which do you like the most as a podcast? What is this? What is the name of this icon logo?
Yeah.
Cover. So 1, 2, 3, 4 in these last 4 minutes, please. Give us your favorite choice. Blue, red. It will be very helpful. We will love this. And we'll post it on LinkedIn probably, right, Mike?
Yeah, I think so. And Louis, you can talk about when this whole thing launches and what you're hoping to do with it.
Awesome. The podcast?
Yeah.
Well, when are we launching the podcast? I know we're recording pretty soon, but we're launching in a couple of weeks, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So what I'm hoping that we can do is have some honest conversation. As everybody saw here, I really get a lot of energy back from kind of every idea I throw out there, at Mike. I think we both find a little bit of the same, that, there's just a lot of depth and a lot of really interesting topics to explore. And it kind of feels like we've read and watched a lot of the same things. So hopefully we can create a more informed environment for a conversation on donor growth, which isn't a topic, it's kind of like creative destruction that is, nonprofits don't typically think about. And we feel that is pretty important. And we feel that having a growth mentality is a different type of way of thinking about things. And that it doesn't have to mean that you're copping out from kind of the principles of nonprofit service or any of the other things, but that, there's just a lot of knowledge out there that we're going to tease out, we're going to research, and we're going to share with you. Does that sound appropriate?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Louis. This was a lot of fun.
This was great. Thanks to everybody who was here, as always. Happy to connect with you. Oh, wait. We have to vote. Let me see. Number 3. Blue. So we have 3 votes for 2 and 4 votes for 3. Okay.
All right.
So I think that's probably our survey. We did a survey. It's an engagement tool. Thanks, everybody.
There you go. All right.